And we are live for Thursday night football. It is week 5. Man, I cannot believe we are already in week 5, but these are the weeks where it really starts to count. We got to start stacking the W's in your fantasy football leagues. This is going to be a fun game. I think underratedly fun game tonight between the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got to admit, a little bit surprised that the Falcons are favored in this game. Largely likely because they're at home. They're 2.5-point favorites in this one. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, don't make any mistake about it, they have clearly been better than the Atlanta Falcons this season. I'm excited to break down this game. We're going to start with the Falcons side of the ball. We're going to get to the start-sits, by the way. We're going to get to the start-sits. Here's the plan. First 10 minutes, going to break down every single player on the Atlanta Falcons that is relevant tonight. The next 10 minutes, we're going to break down every single Buccaneers player that is relevant tonight. The last 40 minutes, we are going to grind through the start-sit questions, the Thursday night start-sit questions. And Max, we're going to get to the free player prop. Max, I got 2 free player props tonight. We are 10-5 on the free player props. Let's go, man. I'm pumped. We got a fun Thursday night football game to kick off week 5. All right, let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. Guys, if you have Bijan Robinson, I get it. Understandably, I get that you are frustrated. I am also very frustrated with Bijan Robinson in my fantasy leagues. I was drafting Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, who we'll get to in a second. Sam, don't go to Kyle Pitts yet. We're on Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson needs to be started in all fantasy leagues. I mean, there's really no way not to start Bijan Robinson. I get that Tyler Algier has been annoying. I get that Bijan's been a little banged up. He's been limited in practice for back-to-back weeks now. He was off the injury report technically tonight. He only played 64% of snaps last week. That was a season-low snap percentage. He also saw a season-low 7 carries last week. He still saw 4 targets, though, for a 12% target share. The receiving role is still there, guys, for Bijan. Bijan is still one of the most talented running backs in all of the NFL. You cannot bench Bijan Robinson. So if you found your way to this live stream, you're already in the top 99th percentile of fantasy managers out there, and I'm here to just talk some sense into the Bijan people tonight. You have to start Bijan Robinson. He was your first pick. He's been a little underwhelming, very underwhelming, I think it's fair to say. He still hasn't lost leagues yet. He still has a massive ceiling. He still should be scoring more touchdowns than he's scoring too. We'll get to Tyler Algier here in a second. But last week, the most concerning piece for me with Bijan was the red zone role. No red zone touches for Bijan last week. But yeah, we're starting Bijan Robinson. Not too much discussion, honestly, to be had. I also think we need to be starting Drake London tonight. This is a sneaky good matchup for Drake London tonight. The Buccaneers, they're without one of their starting pieces in the secondary tonight. We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown cook this defense and Jameson Williams cook this defense. Paris Campbell and the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles, guys, they were not a real offense last week. Dallas Goedert, Saquon had like 90% of their total yards. Paris Campbell went over 11 points. Drake London can do the same thing. I think Darnell Mooney and Drake London, both good starts tonight. Drake London's a must start, and I think Darnell Mooney is a decent start. Not a must start. We got him ranked as a top 40 wide receiver this week, though, wide receiver 38. I actually like him even a little bit better than that. I'm sure he'll be in a lot of the start-sit questions tonight, but he's been over 8.5 points, 3 straight games. He's really not coming off the field. The receivers, this is a nice game for fantasy tonight between the Falcons and the Bucs, because on the Falcons side of the ball, really predictable passing attack. Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Drake London, these guys are not coming off the field. These are the 3 receivers that are going to be on the field every single snap. The thing that's a little bit less certain, though, and go to the Ray McLeod here, snap percentage. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, guys, we're live on YouTube also. It's a better viewing experience on YouTube, I promise. I'm not just saying that to try to get more people in the YouTube. It just actually is a better viewing experience. I'm saying the same stuff on both lives. The link to the YouTube live is in the TikTok bio. Ray McLeod, another guy in the Elijah Moore role. We're not calling it the Wandale role anymore, by the way. That was a mistake. Wandale is also sort of in the Elijah Moore role. The unique part for Wandale, though, he's going to get a 40% target share this week with Malik Neighbors out. Ray McLeod, he's in the Elijah Moore role also. He's not coming off the field, but his air yards are basically 0. I mean, he's getting those really not exciting slot targets, has somewhat of a floor because of that, but just absolutely no ceiling for Ray McLeod. Do not start Ray McLeod unless you are really desperate in a deep league. All right, let's talk about these other 2 ancillary pieces for the Falcons who are relevant for sure. Tyler Algier is not the worst start in the world tonight. He's looked good. He's really always looked good since he entered the NFL. He's coming off his best game of the season. He had 60 rushing yards and 2 catches. He had 80 total yards last week. Only played 40% of the snaps, but that was the season high, 40% of the snaps. So season low, 62% snap share for Bijan last week. Season high, 40% snap share for Algier last week. I think we see something somewhat similar. Again, Bijan's still the guy you want over Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier is like Braylon Allen, a league-winning handcuff running back with some standalone value. But let's not get our skis out in front of us here with Tyler Algier. He's not this smash start that you need to start. I'd much prefer not to start Tyler Algier and just hold on to him as the high upside handcuff. I feel very similar still with Braylon Allen too. I don't really want to start Braylon Allen, but do I want Braylon Allen on my fantasy teams? Absolutely, I do, because he can win fantasy leagues if anything happens to Brees. Same thing here with Algier and Bijan. Again, some standalone value here. He did have 2 targets. He did outplay Bijan last week. I still not, going to say he's better than Bijan though. Absolutely not. And then Kyle Pitts. I don't know how many Kyle Pitts start sit questions we're really going to see tonight. I expect some Kyle Pitts, Kate Otten questions. We're about to get the Bucs, by the way. This is the end of the Falcons recap. I'll touch on Kirk Cousins for a second here. But Kyle Pitts, I do hope we get some Kyle Pitts start sit questions. I see one in the live right now. Kyle Pitts or Zach Ertz. Like it's probably Zach Ertz. We're gonna get to the start sits in a second. But I do think Kyle Pitts is borderline droppable in 10-man leagues. I would prefer Kyle Pitts over Mark Andrews. I think still it's close. I still think they both have a theoretical ceiling. They haven't shown it this season. I really want to see a Kyle Pitts game tonight, guys. I mean, he's really not startable. We haven't seen the ceiling. You need a real ceiling. If you have a 0-point floor, then you need somewhat of a ceiling. Kate Otten is absolutely a safer start, by the way, tonight. He's a safer start than Kyle Pitts. I'm not super excited to start Kate Otten, though. I do think people are a little bit too excited about Kate Otten. But if I had to choose which guy was less likely to score 0 points tonight, that would be Kate Otten, not Kyle Pitts. And arguably Otten even has a higher ceiling too. I mean, the ceiling for Kyle Pitts has been really sad. This is not the same role. The whole reason I was in on Kyle Pitts this season was the air yards. I fall in love with air yards sometimes to a fault, especially when I assume those air yards are going to be there season to season, because they actually are one of the stickiest stats season to season, because the air yards sort of explain what your role is in the offense. And Kyle Pitts is ranked top 3 in air yards among tight ends every single year of his career, except this season. This season, Kyle Pitts, volume-wise, air yards-wise, he ranks 11th. He's not even in the top 10. I mean, he's not getting these valuable deep targets in this offense. He's not getting these valuable matchups against linebackers either. They're putting him up against corners. He is not able to beat corners. Kyle Pitts looks worse than last season. Also, just in the film, like he looks slow, not creating any separation. And I think part of that is he's getting bad matchups against corners. Don't start Kyle Pitts tonight. I'm not rushing to drop him in 12-team leagues because of how bad the tight end landscape is. But man, I really hope Kyle Pitts steps it up for my best ball teams. All right, let's touch on Kirk Cousins quick before jumping to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't start Kirk Cousins, obviously. He's looked better from week one. Week one, it looked like this whole offense was going to tank. That at least improved a little bit. Still doesn't have a fantasy game over 20 points. This is a good matchup. Again, one of the starting pieces of the secondary for the Bucs is out tonight. We did see Jaden Daniels cook this team. Bo Nix had 19 points. Jalen Hurts last week with no receivers still scored 16 points. Goff only had 10 against them. I think we'll probably see somewhere in the Hurts, Bo Nix range fantasy-wise for Kirk tonight, but we'll get to it in a second. I do think there's sneaky potential for a high-scoring game here, actually, as I looked further into these two teams. This is the best matchup of the season for the Falcons passing attack and for Kirk Cousins, but he's off the fantasy radar. Like, I'm starting Justin Fields over him, easily. I start Baker Mayfield over him tonight as well. All right, let's go to the Buccaneers side of the ball, and then we get to all the start sits. We're getting to all the start sits in the comments. I'm going to try to get to every single one coming up here in just a few minutes. If you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live stream. Link is in the TikTok bio. It's a better viewing experience. I'm sharing screen to the game logs of every single player that we're talking about. And I can pull comments up on screen too. Link is in the TikTok bio. If you're watching live on YouTube, I have a screenshot behind me on the TikTok live. It says, no discussion needed. The guys you need to be starting tonight: Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Darnell Mooney. I really think Darnell Mooney is a good start tonight in a lot of situations, depending on who you're starting him over, of course. But I do think he's got a pretty good floor ceiling combo this week. The upside that's maybe worth it this week, Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Tyler Algier, and Baker Mayfield. Let's talk about Rachaad White and Bucky Irving here first on this team, because obviously we're starting Godwin and Evans. I will talk about both them too. But really the real story on this Bucs offense coming into this game is the dynamic between these two running backs. And if you're in a PPR league, I'm starting Rachaad White over Bucky Irving. I am. I'm going to start Rachaad White over Bucky Irving if I'm in a PPR league. I'm not going to feel great about that. I do think there's some risk to that. Like I'm not out here shouting Rachaad White, is a smash start over Bucky Irving. But if it's a PPR league, I do still think it is White over Irving, and it really comes down to the receiving stats, guys. And Bucky Irving, by the way, he actually is an underrated receiver, which was one of the curious reasons why did they draft Bucky Irving? He was almost too identical to Rachaad White. Well, they drafted Bucky Irving because he's clearly a better rusher than Rachaad White. But make no mistake about it, guys. Rachaad White is one of the most talented receiving backs still in the NFL. 4 targets per game. That ranks top 10. His yards per reception, 9.5 yards per reception. That also ranks in the top of the NFL among running backs. And the receiving role, even as Bucky Irving's role has risen, the receiving role really hasn't vanished for Rachaad White. He's got 9 targets in the last 2 weeks. He's been over a 15% target share twice this season. The snap share did go down last week. The receiving role is going down for Rachaad White. I mean, not the receiving role. The playing time is going down for Rachaad White. That's why this is actually pretty close between Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. Like, there's a real debate to be had here because Bucky Irving's the more likely guy to score the touchdown. So you got to decide, do you want the guy with the better receiving role or the guy with the better red zone role? And in half PPR leagues, non-PPR leagues, I'm going to go Bucky Irving because the scoring settings lean more towards touchdowns. And again, Bucky Irving has an underrated receiving ability too. They're not using it as much as they're using Rachaad White's receiving ability. But Bucky Irving's one of these guys. I'd say he's a little bit even above Braylon Allen, even a little bit above Tyler Algier in terms of a handcuff with league-winning upside and standalone value. He has more standalone value than those other guys and a pretty equal league-winning upside. If anything were to happen to Rachaad White, Bucky Irving would be an absolute smash because he's a very good receiving back, just like Braylon Allen, who's a very good receiving back. So yeah, I'm excited to see Bucky tonight. I will really think he's going to do well on the ground in this game. The Buccaneers, historically, like the last couple of seasons, they've been a pass funnel defense. Their defensive line has been good, and their secondary has been bad. That actually has changed a little bit this season. We've seen several running backs do well against this Buccaneers defense. Najee Harris had 70 rushing yards. I'm pretty sure that's the most rushing yards he's had in a game this season. Saquon Barkley had 95 rushing yards against the Buccaneers. Carson Steele had his career game with 72 rushing yards against the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, have been pretty bad rushing wise. The Buccaneers also actually underratedly haven't been as great stopping the run. I'll get to that a little bit in a second when I talk about the outcome of the game. But the Buccaneers still are a bit of a pass funnel defense. All right, I confused the teams there for a second. But yeah, the Atlanta Falcons have not been great against running backs on the ground specifically. We've seen 4 different running backs get at least 70 rushing yards. I think there's a pretty good chance Bucky Irving gets at least 70 rushing yards tonight. For fantasy, the question is, will he get the touchdown? Because you're going to need the touchdown to feel good about a Bucky Irving start. So both guys, startable, not must starts. Both these guys are startable, but not must starts in fantasy football. Both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. Baker Mayfield, guys, he's a top 3 quarterback in fantasy football this season. He's had 3 top 5 finishes. Granted, these all came against pretty good matchups. This Falcons matchup, not necessarily a bad one. Mahomes had 17 points. Hurts had 25 points. They played pretty good quarterbacks. Derek Carr only had 9 points last week. I don't think Baker Mayfield's the top 3 quarterback in fantasy, by the way, but he is so far this season. He actually ranks 4th in fantasy points per game, according to the WalterPicks app. By the way, if you haven't checked out the WalterPicks app yet, do not know what you're waiting for. Download the WalterPicks app. It is a free app to install. There's so many free features. The premium subscriptions are absolutely unmatched. If you're actually serious about fantasy, then you need the WalterPicks app. And also, it's going to help a ton with player props too. We're about to get to the free player prop segment here in a second as well. I got 2 free player props. We are 10-5 on the free player props, guys. We're shooting 66% this season so far. We're going to keep that going with 2 tonight. But yeah, Baker Mayfield's an okay start. I'd prefer not to start him, though, to be clear. I would prefer a guy like Justin Fields against the Cowboys this week, who I feel pretty good about. I would prefer not to start Baker, but you could do much worse. Let's go through the quarterback rankings quick in the WalterPicks app. Then we'll touch on these receivers and K. Dotton. Then we'll get to some of the start sits and the free player props. All right, so we got Baker ranked at QB 13 We're starting Mahomes over him. I don't know if I'd start Mahomes over him. I don't want to start Pat Mahomes. I don't know how you could start Pat Mahomes, honestly, right now. Pat Mahomes, guys, has been straight up a bad fantasy football quarterback. He has not had a game over 18 fantasy points, guys. Like Baker Mayfield's ceiling tonight is higher than Pat Mahomes' ceiling on Monday night. I would start Geno over Baker. I'd start Dak over Baker. I'd start Stroud over Baker. I'd start Fields, Burrow, Kyler, Jordan Love, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Lamar over Baker. Some of those are obviously obvious. So that's really not that many guys, though. Like I'm starting Baker over Lawrence. Purdy versus Baker. Honestly, I might lean Purdy there against the Cardinals. Really do like that matchup. I'd start Baker over Anthony Richardson. I'd start Baker over Caleb Williams over Deshaun. Deshaun, please, man. You get the Commanders. Look at this schedule for Deshaun that he started with. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here. But he's probably the easiest schedule of all quarterbacks to start the season. Just going to continue to disappoint. All right, let's get to the receivers here quick. Both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin locked in starters. At least one of these guys is going to pop off tonight, and probably both these guys will have decent games. Mike Evans was really underrated going into last week. He was a clear buy for me in fantasy football after weeks 2 and 3. He went under 10 points. Last week, we saw it again. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, very comparable fantasy value. Guys, very comparable. They're both top 12, like back-end top 12 wide receivers in fantasy football, especially in PPR leagues. Evans has a little bit more of that deep role. He's got almost over a third of the air yards in his offense are going to Mike Evans. He had a season-high 14 targets last week for 145 air yards, finished as a top 5 receiver. He's now been a top 10 receiver twice. Chris Godwin's been a bit more consistent. He has not gone under 12.5 PPR points. He's getting the underneath role in this offense, not nearly as much of the total air yards, but he doesn't have a game under 8 targets. And the Falcons have also kind of struggled against slot guys. I think back to that Rashee Rice game, the Chiefs versus the Falcons. Rashee Rice had 12 catches for 110 yards out of the slot. We just saw Olave and Shaheed cook the Falcons. Devontae Smith cooked the Falcons. George Pickens cooked the Falcons. Like at least one of these two receivers is going to cook. I do prefer Godwin over Evans because I think there's a similar ceiling, but just a higher floor for Godwin. But both guys are locked in, pretty much must starts in all situations. Maybe we'll get some Mike Evans questions. There shouldn't be any Chris Godwin questions. Find a spot for Chris Godwin in your lineup. So let's talk about K-Dot because I know we're going to get a lot of K-Dot questions. You could do much worse than K-Dot. You could. We do have K-Dot behind Mark Andrews in the ranks this week, though. And I think the floor is underratedly low. Like, I know he's been good back-to-back games. We're going to look at a lot of green in these game logs. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, guys, you're getting the worst live stream experience. The better live stream experience is on YouTube. You're like 2 presses of your finger away from the YouTube live link is in the TikTok bio for that, where we're looking at K-Dot's game logs on the screen as I'm talking through it. And K-Dot, he's not coming off the field. The risk with K-Dot, and we've seen this. We saw this last year. We saw it in 2022 a little bit too, but we saw this last year. Look, the same green, guys, for K-Dot all of last season. It was a lot of wind sprints. Guys, K-Dot led all tight ends last season in snaps. He led all tight ends in snap percentage last season. K-Dot, year 2. K-Dot, he's in year 3 now. He led all tight ends last season in route participation. He finished 7.9 fantasy points per game. He went under 6 fantasy points in like half of his games. This season, we're seeing a similar thing. He ranks top 5 in snaps, top 5 in snap percentage, route participation. Like that is good. Good. He's on the field. Step 1 complete. But we already saw 2 duds this season. Guys, he had negative points in week 2 when he fumbled. He had under 2 points in week 1 against the Commanders. The Commanders have been weirdly good against tight ends, by the way. So yeah, there's like a case for K-Dot tonight. I don't feel good though starting him. Absolutely not. Not going to feel good about it. Like pretty low touchdown ceiling. Doesn't have a touchdown this season. He does have some red zone and end zone targets, I believe. Yeah, he's got 1 red zone target in the last 3 games. Hasn't scored a touchdown though. Like Evans and Godwin are just so far ahead of him. Rashad White is ahead of him, and Bucky Irving is probably the preferred guy to get the ball in his hands too over K-Dot. K-Dot is a wind sprint tight end who happens to have a bunch of targets in the last couple of games. And again, like what's been the ceiling for K-Dot? He hasn't scored a touchdown. He's a touchdown away from being a top 5 tight end, but he's not one of these tight ends. We look at the Brock Bowers. He's not one of these tight ends that hasn't scored a touchdown, but has still been a good start, like still a top 5 option without a touchdown. That's a good signal. He was close last couple of weeks, but yeah, I'm not all in on K-Dot. I think I prefer him over Kyle Pitts tonight. I don't think that's saying that much though. I really don't. We got Kyle Pitts projected ahead of K-Dot in the WalterPicks app, and that's not that unreasonable to me. Like, I do think Kyle Pitts' ceiling is higher than Cade Otton's. Cade Otton's floor, just with the routes and participation, is probably a little bit higher. All right, that's my thoughts on every single game. We're about to get to the 2 free player props of the night, and then we're going to rapid fire starts it. Questions. We're going to get to as many starts as we possibly can over the next 40 minutes. Shout out to everybody in this live stream tonight. Good vibes starting in week 5 here. It's going to be a fun game here between the Bucs and the Falcons. Really quick, a couple interesting notes about this game. Both defenses tonight rank bottom 5 in the NFL in the percentage of plays that are gaining 10 yards against them. So when you look at the defenses across the league and how frequently they're allowing plays of 10 plus yards, both defenses tonight rank bottom 10. So both these defenses have allowed a lot of big plays. I think this is a sneaky good fantasy environment tonight on a short week. Usually the short week favors the defenses, but the Falcons defense really has not been great. And I think the Buccaneers defense has honestly overperformed a little bit, and they're without one of their starting pieces in the secondary. This could be a sneaky high-scoring game, which is why I'm going with 2 overs tonight. Number 1 is a guy we actually haven't talked about yet. Number 1 free player prop tonight, Sterling Shepard, over 2.5 receptions. This is getting plus odds. We're getting plus odds on this one, which I absolutely love. And we look at the Sterling Shepard game logs. First of all, you got to know Sterling Shepard, Baker Mayfield, very close friends. We got the best friend narrative here between Sterling Shepard and Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield this offseason went out and recruited Sterling Shepard to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He said, no, Sterling, don't retire. Come play with me in Tampa Bay. That is why he's on the team, because Baker Mayfield himself recruited Sterling Shepard to the team. Sterling Shepard is, well past his prime. He's almost 32 years old now. He's nearing retirement. He was on the practice squad. Jalen McMillan gets hurt. He's out tonight. Last week, Trey Palmer played behind Sterling Shepard, and then Trey Palmer got hurt. So he's really the third and only other receiver on this team tonight, guys, behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Sterling Shepard is likely going to be out there at least 2/3 of the snaps. Last week, Sterling Shepard played 65% of the snaps when Trey Palmer was healthy for part of that game. And again, he played ahead of Trey Palmer. He was preferred by Baker Mayfield over Trey Palmer, who Trey Palmer was not terrible last season. So we got the number 3 receiver for Baker Mayfield tonight, who is also his best friend, over 2.5 receptions. Last week, he had 5 targets, 3 catches against the Eagles. Again, he was splitting the wide receiver 3 role last week for part of that game too. And the Falcons secondary has not been very scary, guys. Not the scariest secondary here for the Atlanta Falcons. We've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different receivers get at least 6 catches against the Atlanta Falcons. We saw Juju have 2. We saw Xavier Worthy also have 2. I like Sterling Shepard over 2.5 receptions. I think he's getting at least 3 catches in this game, and there's almost no chance he doesn't get some targets in this game, that he's not out there almost every snap, assuming he stays healthy. And the other over I like is Bucky Irving rushing. This has not been, the Falcons have also not been very good at stopping the run. Najee Harris, guys, if Najee Harris can average at least 3.5 yards per carry and go over 70 or over 50 rushing yards, Bucky Irving can too. Bucky Irving is a far superior, more efficient rusher than Najee Harris is. Saquon Barkley went for 95 yards. Carson Steele went for 72 yards. Alvin Kamara went for 77 yards last week on the ground with broken ribs. Bucky Irving has also beat this line in 3 of his 4 games, and his role is increasing. His rushing attempt volume is increasing, and the prop line's just not moving fast enough. We already saw him beat this line on low volume. He doesn't need that many carries to beat this line. He's capable of big plays, and I just mentioned it. Guys, the Falcons defense ranks bottom 5 in 10-plus yard plays allowed. And Bucky Irving's capable of ripping off a run that beats this line in just 1 or 2 runs. He had a season-high, career-high 10 carries last week. I think he gets at least 10 carries in this game this week as he continues to be the best rusher in the Buccaneers backfield. So those are the two free player props tonight. It is Sterling Shepard over 2.5 receptions and Bucky Irving over 44.5 rushing yards. All right, man, I'm pumped for both of these. I like both these a lot. You know I like them a lot if I'm doing 2. If I'm pushing 2, then I'm going to like both those a lot. I pick one, Amari Cooper, JSN, or Wanda. This is not a Thursday night question. I got to prioritize the Thursday night questions. There's a lot of us out here sweating on Thursday night. And we got to see if Malik Neighbors is going to play, man. You can't answer a Wandale question before Malik Neighbors is ruled in or out. By the way, the Giants, They might have one of the worst rosters I've ever seen an NFL offensive roster have if Malik Nabers and Singletary are out this week. I mean, my God, we're going to see a 50% target share for Wando Robinson. He's going to finish with 50 yards. It's going to be ridiculous. All right, Drake London or Dontavian Wicks. Yeah, this is a layup here. Look, I like Dontavian Wicks. I think arguably Dontavian Wicks might be the wide receiver waiver wire ad of the season. Like, I was pretty aggressively targeting Dontavian Wicks off the waiver wire because there's a real ceiling with Dontavian Wicks that is hard to find off the waiver wire. But you're not starting over Drake London. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, even a lot of leagues where I added Dontavian Wicks, I'm not forced to start him this week. All right, yeah, so this was a good one here. I was hoping that we would get some Kyle Pitts questions tonight, and I think we got a good one right here. Let me find this again. Here we go. Kyle Pitts or Zach Ertz? Yeah, so like I think this one's pretty close. Zach Ertz has been pretty good at times this season. So let me go this in the YouTube live. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, we are also live on YouTube. It's a better viewing experience on YouTube. Link to the YouTube live in the TikTok bio. And we're looking at a comparison on the YouTube live of Kyle Pitts and of Zach Ertz. And it's not looking so good for Kyle Pitts here. Zach Ertz projected 7.5, Kyle Pitts 6.9. Ertz has a slightly better matchup. Ertz has clearly been better this season. I mean, it's bleak, man, for Kyle Pitts. Like, I'm rooting for him because he's on so many of my best ball teams where I'm not able to bench Kyle Pitts. I just need to pray he has a couple spike weeks. But he's not going to have spike weeks if he's not getting more than 3 catches. He does not have more than 3 catches in a single game. He would be looking even much worse if he wasn't left wide open in the end zone in week 1 where he scored a touchdown. He doesn't even have a game over 60 yards. I mean, he looks worse this season. And a lot of it has to do with the role that he's in. And I really thought the role was going to get better this year, right? Arthur Smith leaves. I think we were maybe a little too hard on Arthur Smith. I think sometimes we were overconfident in our coach analysis. I think that was at play with Arthur Smith. Definitely an L. I'm eating here with Kyle Pitts. I really believed Kyle Pitts had tight end 1 ceiling. I was telling people to draft Kyle Pitts. That was an L. An early L. And I don't usually take super early L's because it's a long season. Things can change. But the role is going to have to change for Kyle Pitts for him not to be just a clear L in fantasy. So, yeah, we're here we are. It's week 5. You're starting Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts. I think it's fine. I would probably do it. I would probably start Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts. I don't think it's that unreasonable. And it really does come down to a floor ceiling decision there. I do think the ceiling arguably is still higher for Kyle Pitts, but the floor is absolutely higher for Zach Ertz. Bucky, Josh Downs, Leggett at flex. Ooh, that's a good one. Bucky, Downs, Leggett at flex. Appreciate that one from the TikTok live. We're going to get to so many start hits, guys. Don't go anywhere. We're in the rapid fire section. We already talked about every single player in the game tonight and what I think about them. By the way, I think the Buccaneers win tonight. I'm pretty surprised they're underdogs. They're on the road, which is really the 2.5 points that the Falcons are getting. But the Buccaneers have clearly been better than the Falcons this season. Part of the reason I like the Bucky Irving rushing tonight. This is an interesting one. So Leggett has a real ceiling. With Thielen out, he looked good last week. Xavier Leggett was absolutely a sleeper last week, 20 points. Not the best matchup against the Bears this week. I think I prefer Bucky and Downs over Leggett this week with his matchup against the Bears. It's going to be an ugly game between the Panthers and the Bears. Josh Downs ultimately, though, comes down to is Anthony Richardson going to play? If Anthony Richardson was not playing, I'd be smashing the button on Josh Downs in every single league possible. Like Josh Downs, I think, honestly, would be a top 24 wide receiver in PPR leagues. We just saw it last week. Last week, Josh Downs was wide receiver 8 when Joe Flacco played. He had 8 catches, 82 yards, and a TD. He looked great. Josh Downs is one of the more underrated receivers talent-wise in the NFL. Like, I think it's really close, honestly, between him and Pittman. Similar to how close I think it is between Godwin and Evans. That's how I think about Downs and Pittman. I don't think most people think about it that way, but Downs has really looked great. Seems like he's taking a YouTube leap. He's a 30% target share this season. And all of training camp, there was a lot of reports that Downs was actually the wide receiver 1 on this offense, not Pittman. And I don't know if it's actually that. I'm not going that far yet, but I think it's pretty close. Nonetheless, Anthony Richardson, I do think is going to play this week. I would go Downs still, I think, though. Great matchup against the Jags. In PPR, it's got to be Downs. If it's half PPR, then I might go Bucky Irving. If it's non-PPR, I'd go Bucky. I like to lean the running backs in the half PPR, non-PPR formats, because they're more likely to score the touchdowns, which matter so much more in those formats. But in PPR, Josh Downs, guys, he just had 8 catches last week. He clearly is also a favorite target for Anthony Richardson. He had a 27% target share in week 3 with Anthony Richardson. And the Jaguars are the real reason you got to start Josh Downs this week, regardless of the quarterback. In this start sit, at least, the Jaguars defense has been atrocious. Nico and Diggs, both top 15 receivers. Khalil Shakir is a top 20 receiver. We saw Judy and Elijah Moore both go over 10 points. Tyreek Hill and Waddle, both top 20 receivers in week 1. This Jaguars team is a defense to target aggressively. So, yeah, I like Josh Downs this week over Bucky Irving. All right, Garrett Wilson or Wandale. Again, not a Thursday night question. Baker or Stroud? Go Stroud over Baker. Stroud over Baker. I'm holding out hope for Evan Ingram, I think, in this one. And honestly, like, how much here, let me phrase it this way. How much different is Brenton Strange than Cade Otton? Like, really? If Evan Ingram is out, Strange is basically the same thing. He's going to be out there almost every single snap. We're going to see a lot of green and yellow here in the participation category. He's probably going to get similar target volume to Cade Otton. But then if Evan Ingram plays, like, yes, I'm absolutely starting Ingram over Otton, assuming he plays. Now, I do personally think we see Evan Ingram and Njoku this week. And I'm speculating here. I don't feel super confident about both guys because we obviously haven't seen them in a while, but they're getting in limited practices. This Evan Ingram injury, man, I mean, just so bleak. Of all the injuries this season, I honestly think this is the most bleak one. And this happened during the Sunday Live in week 2, minutes before the game. I mean, you just don't see this happen in the NFL. Tweaking your hamstring in warmups. My gosh. So, yeah, I'm holding out hope for Ingram in this one, and I'm probably adding Brenton Strange. I don't even mind just dropping Cade Otton and adding Brenton Strange. And you gotta build around your top tight end, Evan Ingram. Kyle Pitts tonight. Jason, I'm praying for Kyle Pitts tonight, but you can't start him tonight. You absolutely cannot. Guys, if you're just joining in the YouTube Live, smash the like button. The Buccaneers are underdogs against the Falcons tonight because they're on the road, but don't make no mistake about it. The Buccaneers have been better than the Falcons by a significant margin, especially offensively this season. The Falcons offenses look better from that brutal week 1 performance, but I'm excited for this game tonight for fantasy. I think both Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Drake London, Bijan, and Darnell Mooney, all very, very good starts tonight. I think Bucky and Rachaad White are startable also. I prefer Rachaad White over Bucky in PPR leagues, but I think Bucky Irving's going to have a good day on the ground tonight. Both these defenses tonight rank bottom 5 in the rate of 10-plus yard plays allowed. They've both ranked bottom 5 in big plays allowed, essentially, is what this means. That creates a very exciting and good fantasy football environment. That's why I'm excited for this one. I do have 2 free player props tonight as well. We are 10-5 this season on the free player props. I like Sterling Shepard over 2.5 receptions. Out there with his best friend, Baker Mayfield. He's the only other receiver really on the team tonight. Like, I don't think you're going to know. Let me actually see here, pulling up the Buccaneers depth chart here. I don't think you're going to know the name of the other receivers on this team. Cameron Johnson, Cody Thompson. That's who's behind Sterling Shepard. I don't know if we see Sterling Shepard come off the field tonight. And he beat this line last week. They're giving us plus odds. He beat this line last week, and now Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan are out. He split the wide receiver 3 role, Sterling Shepard, with McMillan. Not with McMillan, with Trey Palmer last week. McMillan's out, 2nd straight game. So, yeah, I like this one a lot. And then I also like the Bucky Irving rushing line. So, yeah, last week, Sterling Shepard played 65% of the snaps. I think that's his floor tonight. Bucky Irving, meanwhile, he's seeing his role increase because he's the best rusher on the team. Rachaad White, he stepped up last week. Him and DeAndre Swift. I think they both sort of felt, not the fantasy community, who's obviously talking a lot about both guys, but I think they both felt sort of their jobs on the line last week, and they both stepped up. Rachaad White is still one of the best receiving backs in the NFL, but he's clearly worse at running than Bucky Irving, who's been more efficient or as efficient than him in every single game this season. He averages 5.8 yards per carry. That's near the top of the NFL. He's beaten his rushing line of 44.5 tonight, 3 of 4 games. And we've seen so many running backs beat this line against the Atlanta Falcons. We saw Najee Harris do it in week 1 with 70, a season high 70 yards for Najee against the Falcons. We saw Saquon do it, 95. That was obviously going to happen. Kamara, 77. He had a ton of work in that game. And then Carson Steele did it against the Atlanta Falcons in week 3. So, yeah, I like Bucky to beat this line. I think he also gets a season high carries tonight. Like, I think 10 carries is going to be close to his floor carries wise in this game. He's getting at least 7 carries. That's his season low, 7. He could easily hit 15, like 15 carries, not out of the question for Bucky Irving tonight, which is why he is startable. Not a must start, but startable. Should I start Mooney or Dell at wide receiver 2? Yes, I'm going Mooney. I'm going Mooney over Dell. I'm not sure what the projections are going to say here between Mooney or Dell, but I feel much more comfortable with Mooney than Dell. Yeah, we got Mooney projected ahead of Dell in the WalterPicks app too. I agree with this. I'm playing Mooney straight up over Dell. I'm playing Pittman over Mooney, though. I'm playing Bucky Irving versus Trey Sermon. That one's pretty close. I know there's a lot of Trey Sermon questions here. I would play Rashad White over Trey Sermon. Bucky versus Trey Sermon's really, really close. Sermon's going to project better because he's the only running back on the team this week. And he gets a good matchup versus the Jaguars. Like, on paper, Trey Sermon's so good. It's very tough for me to be starting Trey Sermon, who's just clearly a worse running back than Bucky Irving from a talent perspective. I do think Trey Sermon gets more touches than Bucky this week. I mean, I lean Trey Sermon here. I do. I lean Trey Sermon. I just don't feel good about it. I don't think Trey Sermon's like this smash play. I think Trey Sermon's got a really low floor. He scored a touchdown in week 1, but he's been pretty bad. Efficient. He's 2.7 yards per carry. Man, I mean, it's close. I think this is really close. Honestly, I think I'd go Bucky Irving the more I think about this. This is not an easy decision, but Bucky Irving has at least shown us he's actually a talented running back in the NFL. We've not seen that from Trey Sermon, who's averaging under 3 yards a carry this season. He gets a good matchup versus the Jags. But if Anthony Richardson is playing too, I don't even think the touchdown ceiling's that high for Trey Sermon. I would just go Bucky Irving over Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon's going to project better because he's going to be projected significantly more volume. I don't think that's necessarily a given, though. I'm fine going Bucky over Sermon. I'm fine doing that. And I do think Jonathan Taylor is going to miss this week, like almost definitely. PPR, hope Neighbors plays or play Bucky tonight. Thanks. Oh, Reed, man, this is not an easy one. I do not think Malik Neighbors plays this week. I don't. It seems like he's on the wrong side of questionable. He absolutely has a chance to play. Doesn't practice, though. Like, when guys aren't practicing, seems like a long shot to be ready. Reported from ESPN, because two straight do not practices. Basically, like, when we're projecting stuff in the WalterPicks app, the projections team, if you start the week back-to-back DNPs, you're probably going to be projected out, and you're probably not going to end up playing. He still has a chance because he had 10 days to get cleared, but yeah, I think I just go Bucky. Why bench Cade Otton? Because Cade Otton is a win sprint tight end. He's out there almost every single play, but he frequently has games under 3 fantasy points. He's done that in half of his games this season. Guys, in week 2, Cade Otton had negative fantasy points. I'm going Bucky over Sermon. Drake London or Deontay Johnson. This is a good one here for the receivers. Both these guys rank pretty high. Deontay's ranking, insanely high. But not, wow, they're actually back-to-back. Man, both projected 15 points. I think I'd go Drake London here. I'm a little scared about this Panthers-Bears game just in general. The Bears, I don't think, have been the best matchup for receivers this season. We only seen one good receiver performance, and that was Nico. Yeah, I think I'd go London over Deontay. Mooney or Shakir? Yeah, so Shakir picked up an injury last week. Let's just check in on that quick. I do like Mooney tonight. I do think Mooney is a good option tonight. Let's go to Shakir. They rank really close together. Let's just read the latest on Shakir. Ankle does not practice Wednesday. Yeah, go Mooney. Go Darnell Mooney. Mooney is fully healthy. Shakir is not. And they're comparable options this week. The matchup, like the game environment here against the Texans is kind of exciting. The Texans haven't been the best against receivers, and Shakir has been the receiver you want for the Buffalo Bills. I'm still pretty skeptical, though, on Khalil Shakir. I'm pretty skeptical on all of the Bills' receiving weapons because the Bills team is clearly going to spread the ball around a lot, and the Bills' offense clearly wants to be a run-first offense. That's not good for all the pass catchers. There's going to be games. There's going to be floor games for all of these pass catchers. And maybe the floor is a little bit higher for Shakir. He hasn't gotten under 10 points in a game, has at least 3 targets in every game, but he caught a touchdown in week 1. Without that, he was going to go under 10 points. He'll have games under 10 points this season, almost definitely. And Darnell Mooney, I think the ceiling's actually pretty high this week. He's also not on the injury report like Khalil Shakir is. Out there every single snap. The Buccaneers have been I think, an underrated matchup for receivers this season. They're without Winfield, one of their starting pieces of the secondary tonight. And part of the reason their numbers look okay against receivers, they didn't play any receivers last week. Paris Campbell was the leading wide receiver against them last week. I mean, the Eagles literally had no receivers last week. I mean, Dotson is toast. John Ross is toast. And Paris Campbell's toast. They had 3 pieces of toast running routes last week. The Philadelphia Eagles against this Buccaneers secondary. Darnell Mooney is not toast. We've seen good games from Mooney. He clearly is one of the preferred options for Kirk Cousins. He's out there every single snap. He's seeing decent target shares, at least a 17% target share in 3 straight games for Mooney, six plus targets in 3 straight games. The air yards are there too. He had over 120 air yards last week, like deep targets at times for Mooney. So yeah, I think I would go Mooney here over Khalil Shakir. Should I play Trey Sermon? Yeah, we're just talking about him. I really don't feel great about Trey Sermon. He's startable. He's not a must start. He's startable. He's not a must start. Like he's going to get at least 10 touches, at least 15 probably he's projected for, but he's not good, I don't think. And Richardson's also going to play and steal work and not throw him the ball very much. So I think he's a pretty risky start, Trey Sermon. I think he's startable, though, because he's going to be the starting running back for the Colts this week. Rachaad White or Josh Downs? Yeah, it's Downs over Rachaad White for sure for me. Look, Rachaad White also startable. I'm interested to see what the app says about Rachaad White versus Josh Downs here. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, we're also live on YouTube. The better viewing experiences on YouTube. Link is in the TikTok bio. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button. Let's get to 100 likes on this live stream. It's week 5, man. We got a great matchup tonight between the Bucs and the Falcons. I want to see Downs versus Rachaad White. I think in a PPR league, I would go with Downs over Rachaad White. Oh, man, it's close. I really wish Flacco was starting. This would be such an easier start-sit decision. Yeah, with, again, the matchup for Downs against the Jags, I think he has a pretty good floor. He's seen over a 25% target share in both his first 2 games back. One of those games was from A-Rich. One of those games was from mostly Joe Flacco. But, yeah, I'm going Downs over Rachaad White. It's a pretty close one, but I think that the floor and ceiling is honestly a little bit better for Downs this week. Cade Otton or Tyler Conklin. Look, these are the start-sit questions that get me out of bed in the morning. The sweating it out of Cade Otton and Tyler Conklin. This is where we're at this fantasy season. This is why you kind of can't drop Kyle Pitts or Mark Andrews in leagues with at least 12 teams. Because, like, who are you dropping them for, man? Cade Otton and Tyler Conklin? Like, what's the difference there? There's not much of a difference. All right, I think it is Cade Otton here in this one. I've never been a big Tyler Conklin guy, personally. I feel like I've always underrated him a little bit. Look at this. Like another guy out there basically every single snap. And Tyler Conklin gets the Vikings this week, who have not been good against tight ends. Let's see the tight ends they've played, though. They played Kittle and Kraft. Both were tight end 1 against them. But we saw Theo Johnson do nothing in week 1. We saw Dalton Schultz do nothing in week 3. I would expect Tyler Conklin to do nothing here in week 5. The Jets also, they just play so slow. They are so slow on offense that they don't run a ton of plays. Their defense is really good. It allows them to do that. I'd go on tonight in a game environment that I think will be better. Zach Moss or Mooney is my flex. Yeah, definitely Mooney. I'd go Mooney over Moss. Mayfield or Prescott? Yeah, it's got to be Dak. You got to go Dak over Prescott. Which Tampa Bay running back? So if you're in a PPR league, Dylan, I would lean towards Rachaad White just slightly, because he's going to get more receptions most likely. He's still a very good receiving back. I think he's still a better receiving back than Bucky Irving, who's actually an underrated receiving back himself. He just hasn't been getting that role as much. So in PPR, I'd lean slightly towards Rachaad White. But I do think Bucky's going to lead this team in rushing yards tonight. I do think Bucky Irving is the more likely guy to score a rushing touchdown tonight. So it's super close. In our projections in the WalterPicks App have it super close. I would argue that Bucky's floor is maybe a little bit better just because he's going to get the groundwork. He's going to get at least 10 carries, I think, in this game. But yeah, PPR, it's hard to ignore the receiving upside for Rachaad White. He's been one of the best receiving backs in the league really since he injured. Why is Cade Otton a must bench? Because Cade Otton is a win sprint tight end. He's had back-to-back good games. Those good games, guys, he didn't even get over 12 fantasy points. He has not scored a touchdown this season. In his first 2 games, he was under a combined 2 points. Wow, thanks for the gift, Michael, in the TikTok Live. Appreciate that. That's one of my favorite gifts. Worthy, Mooney, or Wicks, half PPR. Worthy, Mooney, or Wicks? That's a great start-sit question. Worthy versus Mooney versus Wicks. Oh, God, yeah, this is what I kind of expected. All 3 of these guys are startable this week for sure. Xavier Worthy, Darnell Mooney, Dontavian Wicks. By the way, this is like we're getting into my favorite part of the season because we got bye weeks now. We got to actually go into our benches in fantasy, this is where the real teams win. And if you got any of these guys, I think in your starting lineup this week, like you've done a pretty good job building your team if you're actually in a competitive fantasy league. Dontavian Wicks, I was aggressively targeting off the waiver wire this week. I still think it's not that crazy to go Darnell Mooney over Dontavian Wicks tonight. I think I probably would do that. Wicks maybe has a slightly higher ceiling, but I actually think this game environment for Darnell Mooney is more likely to be high scoring than the game environment for Dontavian Wicks. I am a little bit scared about that Packers game. Will the Rams offense be able to keep up? Because I don't know if the Packers are going to throw as much as everyone wants if the Rams are down by 21 points in the first half, which they absolutely might be. And then Xavier Worthy is really tough not to start with Rashee Rice out. And I don't think we really didn't even change the Xavier Worthy projection that much. With Rice out, I think he only gained like a couple percent of the target share. But he clearly has to be a bigger part of the offense. He doesn't have a game with more than 3 catches yet. I mean, he's going to have to play a slightly different role in this offense moving forward without Rashee Rice. Very weird situation, by the way, with Rashee Rice. Is he even going to play again this season, or is he out for the season? It seemed like he was out for the season. They've been really slow to say that definitively. To me, by the way, with the Rashee Rice stuff, I know a lot of people are curious what's going on with Rashee Rice. I'm purely speculating my opinion here. Seems like the Chiefs are just praying and holding out hope that they can find some path of Rashee Rice playing in the NFL playoffs. I do not think Rashee Rice will play another game this fantasy football season. That's my current thought on it. I know a lot of people are being a little bit more optimistic than that, but it seemed really bad out of the jump with that knee injury. So, yeah, I think I would go Worthy here over Darnell Mooney. I'd play Worthy over Dontavian Wicks as well. Sam, horrible running back situation this week with Dobbins and Gibbs on bye. Is Algier worth starting? Antonio Gibson, Shalim McCoffin, or Roschon? Pick one. Yeah, start Algier here. And there were some comments by the Patriots coaching staff that maybe Antonio Gibson will start this week. I think that's like, even if he starts, I would be kind of surprised to see Gibson get more work than Ramondre Stevenson. Gibson has been better than Mondre in a couple games now, but I don't think he's like this great start, even kind of a good matchup against the Dolphins. This is not a bad matchup for the Falcons rushing attack. Tyler Ayers, wow, this projects super close. I think I personally go Algier. He's got a slightly higher ceiling, even slightly better floor here, just a slightly worse median projection for Algier. But yeah, he had 10 points last week. He had a season-high snap percentage, season-high carries. Bijan was limited in practice a little bit this week. Bijan's still a locked-in start, but I think you could do much worse than Algier this week. I'm fine starting Algier over Antonio Gibson. I definitely would start Algier over Jaleel McLaughlin and Roschon Johnson. Darnold or Dak, not a Thursday night question. I think I'd probably lean towards Darnold there, though, with the matchup lean towards Dak there with the matchup for Darnold. Why must bench Cade Otton? Because you could almost definitely find a better tight end than Cade Otton. I would start Mark Andrews over Cade Otton. Kyle Pitts is close. I think I would start Kyle Pitts over Cade Otton. Cole Kmet, I'd start over Cade Otton. Isaiah Likely, Zach Ertz, I'd start over Cade Otton. Pat Freiermuth, Colby Parkinson, I'd start over Cade Otton. Tucker Kraft, I would love Tucker Kraft over Cade Otton if I could do that. Like Tucker Kraft, I feel like a lot of people are actually thinking about these two guys similarly because Tucker Kraft's had a decent game recently. Cade Otton's had some decent games recently. I don't think about these guys the same way at all. I think Cade Otton is this like kind of low floor, extremely low floor, not super high upside, win sprint tight end. He's out there every single snap. He's running routes in every single passing play, but he's just never consistently getting elite target share. And we saw that in the first 2 weeks. He was under 11% target share the first 2 weeks, guys, in some high scoring games for the Bucs, high pass game environments. He had 2 targets. He had 4 targets for the first 2 games. He could easily get just 2 targets tonight. Would not be surprising at all. Meanwhile, I think that Tucker Kraft is actually a really good tight end with a really good ceiling. And he was the tight end 1 last week. Guys, we already saw tight end 1 performance from Tucker Kraft. He's beat out another good tight end in this offense, Luke Musgrave, and is just taking the job right from Luke Musgrave. It's not a 50-50 split anymore. And Musgrave's also dealing with an injury now. But in the 3 full healthy games Kraft has played, he's over 80% snap share in all 3 of them. He's had at least 15% target share 3 straight weeks. Like, this is not just raw volume. This is also consistent, pretty good target share from Kraft. I'd much prefer Kraft over Otton. So, yeah, Otton, but to be clear, he's not a must bench in all situations. I just think there's probably tight ends out there that you can get that I would start over him. So, yeah, I'd prefer to bench Otton. I definitely would. Do you think Joe Mixon will play? Yeah, Samuel, I do. I do think Mixon's going to play, but he hasn't practiced yet. So, I'm maybe just being too optimistic there. Wandale, Rashad White, or Pittman, or Dowdle, or Stevenson. Bench 1. Yeah, bench Dowdle. I think bench Dowdle here, especially if Neighbors doesn't play. I mean, I would start Rashad White tonight for sure in this one. And then we'll see on Neighbors. But even if Neighbors does play, I think I'd go Wandale over Dowdle. Bucky, Michael Pittman Jr. or Scary Terry. Yeah, you cannot force Bucky Irving into your lineup and start sits like this. Brad, I'm glad you asked this one. Start Goddard over Pitts, by the way, except with Goddard on bye. I mean, it's a close one. I just think that the ceiling for Pitts is higher than Goddard. The floors are the same. Dallas Goddard on bye and Kyle Pitts playing tonight, same exact floor, 0 points. But the ceiling, I do think Kyle Pitts has somewhat of a real ceiling. Jack, we'll get to this Debo question. I think this is a pretty good question here. But yeah, you got to be starting Michael Pittman Jr. and Terry McLaurin over Bucky Irving tonight, like by a lot. Great matchup for Michael Pittman Jr. this week. Not a great matchup for Terry McLaurin, but man, that offense has been balling. Yeah, so we got Debo Samuel really highly ranked, and this definitely stood out to me. In our rankings too. Actually, him as wide receiver 5 right here in PPR leagues. Definitely a little bit high. The thing with Debo is the ceiling is absolutely astronomical on this team right now. First of all, the floor is also strong. He's been over 10 points in every game he's played in. And the real thing here, Debo's just back to his full role. He played 76% of the snaps last week. I didn't really fully expect this in his first game back. He was out there 3/4 of the snaps. He only had 5 targets for a 20% target share, though. So he's had at least a 19% target share in every single game. The other thing with Debo is he clearly has an increased rushing role with Christian McCaffrey out. So you got a guy with one of the highest ceilings in the NFL. Let me just go back to last season to show you what this high ceiling looks like. He had back-to-back games over 34 fantasy points last season. And a big part of this was he was scoring receiving touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. There's just not that many guys in the NFL that are capable of that. And then you look at the matchup this week for Debo Samuel, and it's hard not to get a little bit excited. This Cardinals defense has been atrocious. Absolutely terrible. Olamide Zaccheaus, Terry McLaurin torched them last week. Amon-Ra St. Brown crushed them a week before that. I mean, they've been killed on the ground. I do think Jordan Mason will have a good game, but Debo Samuel is going to get work on the ground too against this Cardinals defense that's been atrocious at stopping the run. So yeah, I do like Debo this week. I don't know if I'd argue him as a top 5 receiver. There's some other good options. I think, we got him at 6 here. I don't know why I said 5. I swear I just saw him at 5. Maybe we literally just updated. But yeah, I think Godwin over Debo, Mike Evans over Debo is like a reasonable start-sit decision to make. But yeah, he's a top 10 option, I think, this week with the buys. I think Debo's a really good option this week because he's back to full steam. He's in a pretty good game environment this week against the Cardinals. Mike Evans or Deontay Johnson? Yes, Mike Evans, easily. Saquon on bye, Mixon out. 2 out of 3. Sermon, Algier, Braylon Allen, please help. Yeah, so I'm starting Algier there. And I think I'm going Sermon over Braylon Allen, but it's definitely close. Chase Brown or Algier? Let's do this one. A lot of Algier, a lot of Bucky Irving questions tonight. Let's go Chase Brown, Tyler Algier. It's got to be Chase Brown. Oh, man, wow. It's Tyler Algier. Way better matchup for him. I'm going Algier. Yep, over Chase Brown. I think I agree with this from the WalterPicks app. I'm a little surprised, but it makes sense with Algier's role growing. Najee or Mooney this week? Yeah, you got to play Najee. Jalen Warren has not practiced this week. Cordell Patterson has not practiced this week. The Cowboys have been smash matchup for running backs this season. Guys, if you are just tuning in or you've been here from the beginning, smash the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Hit the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. Also on the YouTube live, guys. Hit the subscribe button so you know when I'm live next. I'm live every single Thursday night, every single Sunday morning, every single Tuesday night for you guys, all fantasy season. We are out here grinding. Man, it's so much fun. I love this. And I appreciate everyone that's in here. Our big question, boss man, PPR. Would you start Irving tonight over Dowdle? Yep, I wouldn't even think twice about it. Dowdle has no ceiling, guys. What is the ceiling for Rico Dowdle? He's not on a run first team. He's in like a 3-way backfield. I had no real interest in Dowdle. Like I even dropped him in one of my competitive 12-team leagues like weeks ago because I was like, what is he doing on my roster? He cannot win me my league. This is the way I think in fantasy. Don't waste roster slots on guys that can't win your league. Because that's the goal, guys. At the end of the day, the goal is to win your league, and Rico Dowdle does not have league-winning upside. Bucky Irving does. And even this week, I prefer Bucky Irving over Dowdle. And there's probably a good argument Dowdle will get the ball maybe a little bit more than Bucky, but Bucky's just a better running back, higher upside running back just in general. And he's also an injury away from actually winning you your league. So, yeah, I'm definitely going Bucky over Dowdle. Javonte Williams, Chase Brown, or Algier. Yeah, so let's compare him to Javonte here because that one's maybe a little closer. Javonte's coming off a good game. He has a good matchup this week. I think I'd probably lean Javonte. Yeah, he's got a better matchup, and he had a better role last week too. He only had 10 points. I actually thought he did better than that. 77 rushing yards, only 2 catches, 3 yards. But he had 50% of the rush share, 12% target share. Actually, it was a pretty consistent role. I don't know why I thought he played even more than he did last week. But yeah, the best matchup of the season for Javonte. I think I'd lean Javonte over Bucky. Pretty close one. And then I played Bucky over Chase Brown. I played Bucky over Algier too. Pollard is on bye. So I'm running with Jacobs in my main RB. Yeah, I'd go Javonte. Bucky or Moss. Yeah, I'm going Bucky over Moss too. I think Bucky over Moss. Bucky over Moss and Chase Brown. Olave or London? Oh, man, that's a tough one too. In division here, I think it's Olave. I still think Olave is one of the more underrated receivers right now in the NFL. A tough matchup for him against the Chiefs, but he's had a really good floor. Only 1 touchdown still this season. I do like Drake London a lot tonight too. Better matchup for London, I think, this week than for the Chiefs. In raw points per game so far this season, it's going to look a bit better for Olave. But again, the Bucs are without Winfield tonight, one of their starting pieces in the secondary. Why bench Cade Otton? Because he's a win sprint tight end that has a 0-point floor. Dallas Goedert and Cade Otton, Kyle Pitts, they all have the same floor this week, guys. Is Joe Mixon going to play this week? I do kind of think he's going to play. Cade Otton, Noah Gray, or Eric All. Yeah, so here is the right start-sit question. Eric, not why should we bench Cade Otton, but who should we bench Cade Otton for, right? There's 2 sides, at least 2 sides, to every single start-sit decision, right? It's not easy to make blanketed statements because some leagues, you can't bench Cade Otton. And I think this is probably one of those leagues. Noah Gray, by the way, a pretty good sleeper, honestly. Rest of season, Eric All is starting to cook a little bit too. He's taking some of that role from Mike Gesicki. But yeah, this one's on. And the difference between all 3 of these tight ends, one of these guys is not coming off the field. Sure, he's running wind sprints half the time. But still, Cade Otton is not coming off the field in comparison to these other guys that, like, is their ceilings really that much higher? No, they're not. And Noah Gray, I think he's at around half the snaps. Yeah, about 50% of the snaps. Maybe he'll play a little bit more with the Rashee Rice injury. Cameron, no need to spam in the YouTube live. I think I did actually already answer this one. I would go Downs. I think Downs versus Mooney actually is a good question. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, Eric All is starting to play a little bit more. He looks like a pretty good rookie tight end. I'm still not playing him over Cade Otton. Now let's get to Mooney versus Downs here because I actually think it's a good question. And I've talked about both these guys. I don't think I've compared them yet. Yeah, I do lean Mooney also. I agree with Walter on this one. By the way, if you haven't checked out the WalterPicks app yet, if I didn't get to your start sit, because we are nearing the end of the live stream, it's going to be a great Thursday night game. If you're struggling with any Thursday night start sits, download the WalterPicks app. It is free. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build this app. It's going to help you with start sits even better than I can because it's going to be custom to your league scoring settings too. Link to that is in the TikTok bio, in the YouTube description. I'm praying Kyle Pitts does well. I do not think Kyle Pitts is going to play well. And then, yeah, Downs versus Mooney. Downs has a better matchup, guys. Downs has the better target shares, too. I do lean Downs. I wish it was Flacco instead of A-Rich, but I still think I'd go Downs over Mooney. And again, I do like Mooney tonight, too. I just like Downs a little bit more. Worthy or Sutton, not a Thursday night one. Look to trade Bijan. Let's see how he does tonight. But no, I'm generally buying Bijan. I'm trying to buy Bijan and Brees right now. People are fully panicked on Brees. I can't believe on the Tuesday night recap video how many panics Brees Hall comments I saw. So many people. Should I sell Brees? Should I sell Brees? ETN or Bucky this week? Oh, man. You got to go ETN. It has to be ETN over Bucky. Even though ETN's looked bad, Bucky's looked good. Why start Darnell Mooney? Because he's in a good role. He's getting a lot of air yards. He's getting valuable targets. He's not coming off the field. And this is a good matchup for Darnell Mooney tonight. Mooney or Pickens is my wide receiver 2 this week. Yeah, it's got to be Pickens, man. You got to go Pickens over Mooney. I think Pickens has the most yards in the NFL among receivers without a touchdown this season. He really should have a touchdown this season, and he doesn't. I think we would all be thinking about him a little bit more optimistically had he scored a touchdown. Pickens is in a pretty good spot against the Cowboys this week. Cowboys offense should be able to score against the Steelers defense, which didn't look that good, honestly, against the Colts last week. The Steelers defense took a little bit of a step back last week. We'll see if that continues against the Cowboys, but yeah, I do like Pickens a decent bit this week more than Darnell Mooney. Honestly, I think Pickens versus Drake London is actually like kind of close. I would probably go Drake London there, but I think it's closer than people probably realize. Need a flex between Chuba Hubbard, BTJ, and Pittman. Not a Thursday night starts it here. I think I lean towards Pittman though. Yeah, it's Pickens here. Ramondre or Bucky. Here we go. These are the start sits that are really tough. I think Ramondre is going to project a bit better than Bucky Irving. But honestly, man, like I would not knock you for going Bucky Irving in this one. I really wouldn't. I this is a good matchup for Mondre, which makes this tougher. The Dolphins have been crushed by running backs this season. James Cook crushed them. ETN had 12 points and a touchdown. Sharp crushed them. Last week, Tony Pollard and Spears combined almost 30 points, destroyed them. Like Mondre, this really should be a good Mondre matchup. But Mondre's also fumbled in back-to-back games, and the coaches are talking about not starting him over Antonio Gibson. By the way, Antonio Gibson has had his own fumble problems in the NFL. Like I don't even know how they're more confident about Antonio Gibson's ball carrying than Mondre's. I mean, the Pats are in complete disarray. Bucky Irving, I feel much more optimistic about, honestly, rest of season, at least in comparison to where you drafted him, though. I mean, he was really a waiver wire ad. We wrote up, by the way, if you don't have the WalterPicks app yet, one of the main reasons you need to download it, like right now, in the TikTok bio, in the YouTube description, is we give away transaction advice every week for free to everyone in the WalterPicks app. In the weeks 0, before the season started, weeks 1, weeks 2, weeks 3, we had Bucky Irving as a clear ad. So basically, everyone that used the WalterPicks app has Bucky Irving on their team. There's going to be more guys that are league winners that are added, and we're going to write them up in the WalterPicks app so everyone knows. So you got to download the app for that. I play Irving over Eckler, yeah. I'm playing Olave over Mooney for sure. Kylo, let's get to this one. What's going on, Sam? What's going on, Kylo? Man, we're in week 5, man. We're already a month into the season. It's been a great one so far. I know there's a lot of injuries, a lot of hurdles, a lot of things to overcome. But I would have it no other way, man. That's what it's all about. And whether you're 0-4, 1-3, 2-2, 3-1, 4-0, like it's just getting started, man. It's all about the fantasy playoffs, and it's all about getting there first. All right, we got Bucky or JT. Don't know what's going on. Yeah, Kylo, JT's not going to play this week. He's not going to play this week. I'd be really surprised if he played this week. He hurt his ankle last week. They called it a mild ankle sprain. He has not practiced this week. It is the same ankle he injured last season. You got to think they're pretty cautious with JT, and you kind of already seen it this week. He hasn't practiced yet. I think almost like 5% chance is what I would put it at that he plays. It's not 0, technically, but I put it like in my mind, in my fantasy start-sit decisions, I'm assuming JT is out. That's why we're seeing a lot of Trey Sermon questions tonight, and I would assume Trey Sermon is in, and I want Bucky Irving more than Trey Sermon. Like Trey Sermon versus Daddle, here we are. Like that's a real question, and one for the Sunday morning live for sure. Should I start Evan Ingram? I do think I would start Evan Ingram over both tight ends tonight. I do think Evan Ingram's going to play this week. Joey, how we doing? Should I start Mooney and Tyler? Also Conklin over Cade? No, I'm going Cade over Conklin. I don't love Conklin. Not starting Pitts, LOL. Yeah, Pitts versus Cade, I think it's pretty close. Cade Otton had 9 targets last week. Look, I get that Cade Otton, he's had back-to-back good target shares. But I also don't think we can ignore all of last season where he was out there every snap and was barely getting targets. And I also don't think we can ignore weeks 1 and weeks 2 where Cade Otton was out there getting less than 3 fantasy points, less than 2 fantasy points. He had negative points, guys, in week 2. Same snap percentages, same route participation, only 2 targets. He has 17 targets in his last 2 games. I get that that's notable. I just think there's other tight ends out there like Tucker Kraft that I'd much prefer to start. But I'm starting Cade Otton over Tyler Conklin easily, like pretty easily. And I'm not going to knock anyone that starts him over Kyle Pitts. I personally think there's a real argument for Pitts over Otton. But the floor is absolutely better for Otton. And I think the ceiling is better, arguably, for Pitts. And then Jennings or Whittington this week. Oh, gosh, man, Joe, you're in some deep leagues, man. And I think it's Jennings. Sunday morning, Sam might have a different answer for you, but Thursday night, Sam is leaning Jennings. Jennings has been balling, and he still had a pretty good target share last week with everyone back. What's up, Sam? Been alive for 3 years now. Shout out to you, Jordan, man. I can't believe we've been doing this for 3+ years now, and I'm just as excited for a Thursday night battle between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. All right, pick 2, Drake London, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, and Amari Cooper. Yeah, so you got to start Drake London in this one. I really do like Amari Cooper this week a lot. I think he's going to be in the DFS lineup this week. I think he's got just a very underrated ceiling in this game, like wide receiver 1 type of ceiling. DJ Moore ranks pretty similarly, and then Deontay also ranks really well. Yeah, it's going to be Deontay. I think it's Drake London and Deontay. I would definitely start Drake London, though. Drake London versus Deontay, that one's pretty close. I actually think, if I had to choose between those two, I think I would lean Drake London over Deontay. I don't know if it's going to project that way. I feel better about the game environment tonight versus the Bucs. They both project 15 points. It's got to be Love, Matt. It's got to be Love over Baker. I'm going Drake London over Deontay Johnson. I feel pretty good about Drake London tonight. Again, one of the things that has me excited about this game, both the defenses tonight ranked bottom 5 in the rate of 10+ yard plays allowed. They're both bottom 5 defenses in terms of explosive plays allowed. Could be a sneaky good fantasy environment. All right, we'll wrap up the live with the 2 free player props one last time. Sterling Shepard, Baker Mayfield's best friend, who we recruited to the team, is the wide receiver 3, should be out there almost every single snap tonight. They're giving us plus odds on over 2.5 receptions. And then Bucky Irving, over 44.5 rushing yards. I do think Bucky Irving has a good rushing game. I do not think Bucky Irving is this smash must-start fantasy player tonight. He is startable, though. Absolutely, he is startable. He's the running back, I think, with the highest touchdown ceiling on the Buccaneers tonight. I do think Rachaad White has a better receiving role than him still. But I think Bucky's going to have some success on the ground in this one. We've seen it 4 different times against this Falcons defense. Carson Steele did it. Kamara did it. Saquon did it. Najee Harris did it. And Bucky Irving, I think, is going to do it tonight over 50 rushing yards. Those are the 2 free player props. Guys, enjoy the Thursday night football game. If I didn't get to your start sit, make sure you go to the WalterPicks app. It'll help you out, I promise, in the YouTube description, in the TikTok bio. I will see you all Sunday morning. Can't wait, guys. Let's have a great week 5. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me tonight. Good luck, everyone. I'll talk to you all super soon.